My name is Alan. I'm a member of the Stirling University Community Researcher team, which is a team of researchers that are looking into the impact that the Life Changes Trust's funding has had. I am a member of one of the beneficiary groups of the Life Changes Trust, just like all of the co-researchers. I am from the Young People with Care Experience group. The other two groups are people with dementia and people who are carers of those with dementia. Today, on the 5th of October 2021, we met to talk about our journey and the project that we've been on for the past couple of years.
I think that was the most enjoyable part for me, was the interviews.
Definitely.
I really enjoyed it. I looked forward to it, and I rehearsed beforehand, getting my questions ready, because we had 5, and it was so easy for the person you were interviewed to move off, and you were having to pull them back.
Louise kept us right, didn't she?
To try and get these 5 key points. So it was good to have a framework to work towards, because it kept it structured.
It was good to have those half-hour meeting before the interview as well, with whoever we were doing the interview with. That was key.
That was crucial.
Yeah. Rather than just getting stuck in.
I like the idea that with the 5 question, we didn't just say, right, Louise would do all the 5 questions, we do an alternative question. And that was really good as well, because it means that we felt really involved with the whole interview session as well, you know, and I think that was a really good thing about our role, you know.
I haven't actually done any interviews with young people with care experience, but I read a couple of transcripts. And one person said, which kind of struck with me for some reason, they said that they didn't want to be defined by being a young person with care experience. Whereas the dementia side, they want to share their experiences so that others might benefit by changing the system or whatever. I thought it was quite interesting, because the young people, they just want to get out there and use that and live their lives, I guess. Whereas the older, the dementia side wants to change things for other people. Maybe you'll get diagnosed with dementia.
No, I think that's true though. I think that sort of reflects this sort of attitude. It's maybe it's a sort of shame from the stigma that's with people, you know, young people care experience, trying to get away from that and not be pigeonholed. And you know.
I think care experience is such a big statement, isn't it? It could be anybody, because I've interviewed 2 young carers with, I think one was Andrea, I think the one might be Louise, and it's 2 different extremes, because one of the girl I interviewed with, I think it was Andrea, was that she was in the care home since she was 12, and she said that with the funding with LCT, it totally changed her life, you know, and she actually moved on from person who left school, didn't do any qualification, and the next thing when we interviewed her, she was sitting her hires at the college and talking about going to uni, and that's changed her so much, you know. And then there was the other one who was a young carer, actually involved with her mother, and that's changed her as well with the system that was placed in with her with LCT. So it's such a diverse group as well, isn't it, the young carer? And I never thought about that until I spoke to these 2 people, you know.
Same with people with dementia. I've totally learned all sorts about that. I had no idea. You know, all I knew was the stereotypes and from films and stuff. But then, you know,
I learned that as well, actually.
Yeah. And I really loved having friends with dementia. Frankly,
You've got a 2 now at least.
I guess as well, I mean, I wasn't involved in any of the interviews, but I think it was you that had said it can only benefit the interview to have somebody with lived experience as part of the interview team, as it were. I don't think that can be sort of replicated any other way without you guys.
I did want to say especially that having the diversity of the group. I think we did kind of mention that, but that's a key part that I think if this were to happen again, that would be a great part of doing it. Not having just co-researchers that are isolated in silos, but having, you know, young people with care experience and people with dementia and carers of people with dementia. I think that's really been, it's so hard to put into words, but I think that's really benefited us in tangible ways as well. I just don't have the words to describe exactly how that's happened. But it's been an important part for me anyway. It's been good.
Although we're all, you would say we're all LCT beneficiaries, I suppose, we've all came from different backgrounds of it, so it was just interesting being in a group of people that had similar experiences but different, and we all understood each other. So sometimes when someone was saying something, you knew that maybe, okay, let's not continue this conversation because that's affecting that person. And there was a bit of a kind of just an understanding of each other, of the experiences that we've all been through. So, but then on the flip side, you kind of felt you were in a kind of safe zone because we've all had the same experiences. So sometimes you felt like you could maybe open up a bit more than you would have maybe in the other different groups, because everybody's kind of experienced it. Because most of the groups I've been on, that has been the dementia side of the LCT, so we've all got a kind of understanding of how the dementia affects us. And again, with it being there was carers in the group and people living with dementia, you were obviously having to, those two different experiences are very different, and it's making sure that we're not upsetting each other in what we're saying. But yeah, I think it's been a really good group, and they've been really really nice people. I'm a bit gutted I didn't get to make the meeting up in Dundee to meet everybody in person.
And I think as well that we're all from different areas of Scotland, and it's not just Central Belt. I mean, Western Isles, Aberdeen, Aberdeenshire. Because we have got different inputs and different experiences, you know.
I really enjoyed when I did interviews with you guys with some of the trustees. So with the staff, because you got a really different perspective. You got a different. It wasn't an academic interview. It wasn't a research interview. It was much more kind of engaged, and I don't know if any of you remember doing.
I did one with you, Louise. Yeah. Did you get any feedback from them about that type of interview with the trustees?
I think they really enjoyed it as well, because they were able to talk about their work, but in that kind of real world sense, and not having to talk about strategies and whatever. They could just explore with you the kind of impact.
Yeah.
Yes, the staff and trustee interviews were quite different.
Yeah.
Oh yes, yes.
But I felt that they all had a great job. They loved their work, which I found really quite encouraging, really.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not surprising that all the projects were so well supported, because all of the staff were so enthusiastic about their work. It's not always what you hear in a workplace, but they were, and they all brought something different to it, which was good.
They always seemed very interested as well in, when I was interviewing, especially the Life Changes Trust staff, they were very interested in actually finding out, like, from me. They wanted to kind of interview me, they were very tempted to turn it around and find out how they were doing, which, like you say, is very encouraging actually. It's nice to see people care. And that's one thing as well that I got out of this actually that was great, because that whole world, and it is a separate world of like funding and who decides how the money gets spent and where it all comes from. And I had no idea about any of that and how it works. It just sort of seemed to happen. But yeah, it was really great getting to actually learn that and see the inner workings and meet the people behind the decisions and find that they're actually really good people that really care and are trying their best. Yeah.
I was looking back at the notes that Louise written about our meetings and all that, and a lot of the information and the ideas didn't just come from the academic staff, they were shared amongst us, and you guys have taken on board what we've suggested. Some of them were obviously not great, and you just rejected it, which is fair enough, But at the same time, we listen to each other, and we are sharing the experience from each other and bouncing off each other with ideas. And I think that's the great thing about the team,
And the other thing that was good was that you involved us in the analysis, which was quite challenging because of the
Tell me about
it. Some of us probably did it better than others, but the analysis was quite different and it was quite challenging. But then I think we identified that we needed more training. And then once we got the training, it kind of all fell into... It was quite good having a bit before the training.
It was the same with the reporting, because I think when you first put the first report, you just did a draft way how we reported it, and then Rosie came back and said, well, you actually need a bit of coding system, and that changed things totally, So that was quite a steep learning curve, and that was ideas that came from yourselves, but then we felt that we really have to comply with what this discussion was all about, in the reporting. That was a difficult one as well, amongst the analysis, but
I think one of the other things that's just a small thing that I think's worked really well is the WhatsApp group. So I think definitely with COVID as well, I get the impression that some people, you know, they've just had enough of looking at a computer for the day. And I think the WhatsApp group was a really good way to keep in touch with. It was just, you know, Myra telling us where you were travelling, or it was just a nice way to keep in touch, and it kind of kept us more as a group. Whereas I think if we met face to face periodically, we might chat at that meeting and then go away and not speak for however long until the next meeting.
And I think what Alan said earlier is really interesting about it being flexible. So you don't have to be everybody 100% engaged in everything for it to work. If you've got a group of people bringing different skills and different amounts of time, then you can fit around that as well.
And that support as well, the mutual support of us being able to support you guys with, like, if it's analysis or whatever it is, and taking on workloads, and then you guys supporting us with, you know, actually, you know, conducting research, obviously. Stuff like that. Was this your guys' first time working with community researchers, like, or co-researchers, or had you done this before?
I've been involved in projects where we've had, say we've consulted on the questions that we were going to use with young people in various different circumstances, but not having done the actual interviews and not the analysis either. But we have had sort of discussion of the results and presenting results together, and not just one person as a token. It was sort of, I think half the young people in one project came along, and we had a kind of almost like a museum vernissage kind of thing. And that was good because the policymakers who were there and the social workers there were in front of things that the young people had produced. And therefore, I think that got rid of some of the hierarchies, and it was more of a social context, but not to this extent, no. So that has been something, I've really, really enjoyed it. It feels kind of like I've learned so much. So I didn't really know much about dementia before this, because most of my work's been with young people. So that was really interesting, and it feels less kind of extractivist if you know that, you know, you're talking to people and they're saying, no, this is really, really relevant, this is really important, and this is what it really means. So I found that reassuring, because you don't like to be this person who's sort of like flies in and then takes stuff away and you've maybe got it a bit wrong, and so.
But we're feeling the same as well, because some of the things we say, and Louise or yourself might say, well, that's actually not quite we're after in the research project. So it's kind of ideas being bounced off each other as well, you know, what we're looking for as a team, you know. And I think the key thing is that it's a team decision, isn't it, from both sides, you know.
How closely did it match between your expectations of what co-researchers would be like in working with them to how it actually panned out?
Well, I didn't have a lot of experience of co-research, so I'd done lots of those kind of projects where you go and interview people with dementia, or you interview family carers. So I don't think I had a huge expectation. I was very aware that people talk about it a lot, and then when you read the journal article or you read, I can't find it. I'm like, what do they mean by? So I really didn't want. That's why I suspect a few of you felt like you've been thrown in the deep end of a swimming pool, because I was like, you're going out to do the interviews, we're doing this properly, you're just going to come. I don't really care that you signed up last week, you can come and interview this trustee with me this week on Zoom, we'll be fine.
I mean, in a way, you listed a few bullet points about the co-researchers, but throughout the last 20 months, the team has moved the goalposts all the way for the better, I think, you know, and I think that's really what co-research is all about, isn't it? You listen, everybody listens to each other's information, bounce off ideas, and I think that's what's the good thing that came out of it over the last 20 months.
I don't know if I'm personally a leader, but again, I guess we all are leaders in our own individual ways. Leaders doesn't mean that you're the person that speaks up the most and gives ideas in every single way, but being a leader, I suppose, is just by example, and just kind of showing up to the table and just saying, like, if you feel like there's something that needs changed or something needs to be adapted, then nothing will change if you don't stand up and speak up, is the way that I've always felt. So I guess in a sense, that's been a leader. And I suppose there's been questions that when we've done interviews, although we had set questions for interviews, there was like time at the end that we could ask our own questions. If like something that came up during the interview, we could then ask the question. So there's a few times I did that. So I suppose that's been a leader as well, because you're kind of leading the way for the lived experience side of things, and you felt like something was missed in an interview, and I felt like it was needed to ask that question, so that was like noted within the project.
I think to me, leader is kind of wrong in a lot of situations, because certainly with education, if anything goes wrong, the fingers always point to the head teacher. And the same with my own department, because I was leading the science department. So if the results are rubbish this year, the first thing the head teacher says is like, what's gone wrong with your leadership? You know, I say, no, hang on a minute. It's not just me, you know, everybody's contributed towards the result. And the same with any organization. You know, you can't just blame the government. You can't just blame the professor in your department. You know, it's a whole team thing. And I think the leadership is a good word, but it depends how you see it, a leader as, you know. You know, our team here, we're all equals, you know. And I think that's a good way to move forward with a lot of projects and organizations. We shouldn't just have that person there. I know the reason why that person's there, because if anything goes wrong, it's your fault. You know, I think that's part of the problem, being a leader, you know, so watch out, Alan.
Yeah. I think part of why we don't want to stick to that word leader, it's something, I think it's because we all know, well, no, maybe not. I'll say what I was going to say. I was going to say maybe it's because you don't feel in your head like you know exactly the way forward and how to get there. It's more like you're contributing.
Yes.
You know? Yeah, it's more like that.
It's brought out kind of, just use Scotland as an example, setting up all these subgroups. I think we work well as teams because I'm a consummate bureaucrat.
You say that all the time.
And they laugh.
I'm believing you as well.
You're a bureaucrat, used to chain yourself to trees.
So I can unpick the words. I can unpick the words in the hidden meanings. Whilst I kind of, there's a place for all of us. We need the bureaucrat, you need the blue sky thinker. But I can talk their language, I know what they mean and what words should be used.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm interested, Alan, how you found work. I mean, you've been with us at most of the meetings, and the other young people have come and gone, but you've stuck with us.
We've been nice to him.
Actually, the Life Changes Trust itself was interesting because it had two diverse groups that it was working with, young people and older people.
Yeah.
And here we are, we've worked well as a team with the researchers, the professional researchers,
Nikki there as well, she's a
and
young person.
Alan has started, So do you find that how did it work for you?
From the beginning, it's been sort of on my mind as to why we've not had as many young people with care experience, and it's been harder to find them. And I think I sort of kind of partly know why. There's a certain shyness, almost a certain. There's a funny. I don't know if I have the words for this. There's a kind of fear of being discovered as well that comes with your care experience a lot of the time, and there's a lot of people with care experience that aren't sure if it counts, like me as well, because I don't have the traditional care experience of being in a care home, and there's all sorts of different things that count, and I didn't realise I would count as some of the care experience because there's kinship care and care under the government in different guises, and I was one of those, so I didn't realise I had care experience until like a couple of years ago, when I started that project that was funded by the LCT.
Just back to the benefits of having community researchers, which I think is what this part is going to be about.
That's it, very fast.
I think for future researchers, you have to have that mix, because we're kind of the bridge between theory and real life, because you can read as much as you like about anything theory-wise, but till you've lived it, and I mean, I can't imagine what you guys a wee bit imagine, but till you've actually been there and done it yourself, it's a whole different perspective, you know. So you need the two sides, don't you, to make effective research.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at policy documents these days, they often have these very, very broad terms, you know, transformation, empowerment, leadership. You know, we had an interesting discussion about what leadership, what the word feels like. Maybe we don't want it, you know, to be the kind of very hierarchical top down, but more sort of taking charge and trying to do things for yourself, and then having the time to work out what does work. So I think, yeah, all of that has been hugely helped in this project by being able to talk to you and then listen. You know, I think everybody has listened to everybody else.
I think that's the
and
key
really
words, isn't it, Sarah?
tried to kind of work out what was being said and why it was so important.
I was wondering about COVID and how it's impacted on the research and the community researcher role, because part of our role would have been out and about in our local communities, linking with the people that we know and encouraging them to participate in the research. But all of our research has been done online. And although it was a good experience, it was my first experience as a community researcher interviewing online, I'm wondering how different it would be if we had been out and about in our communities. We probably would have recruited more people, I would think. And maybe the interviews would have been a bit different, because one or two of the interviews that I did, I felt that it was a bit one-sided. Maybe it was just one, if it was a couple, a person with their carer, it maybe just didn't work as well as it might have done if it had been a real life experience. So I don't know if anybody else felt the same way as I did.
Probably agree with that, actually, yeah.
Yeah, I think
'cause I had been thinking about how great it was and how well we adapted specifically to the...
But we don't know how the other people felt, isn't it?
Exactly.
I think the dynamics of the interview will be different. You know, I think we'd probably find that they would interact with us a wee bit more, you know, because I think a lot of people are a wee bit conscious about the camera, and especially if they know that Louise and her team are maybe recording some of the conversation as well, you know. And I find that's different already today with us meeting face to face than our Zoom in the last 20 months, you know.
Well, I was thinking of my own experience when I have been interviewed by a researcher in my own home, or, you know, during the time I was caring, I participated in a lot of research, and it was usually me being interviewed. And I was relating to that sometimes when I was interviewing some of the candidates that I interviewed for the research. I know I felt it was more daunting actually doing it face to face than I did on the screen. But I don't know.
I do think recruitment-wise, it would have been easier for getting more young people with care experience if it had been face-to-face.
That's the kind of point we kind of talked about earlier, was that for the community researcher team particularly, you've obviously been the main young person that's kind of stuck to the end. I wonder whether more young people might have come had it not been for COVID. They might have come and then stuck around. I think there's probably been like a bit of Zoom fatigue, and there's other priorities. So if you're a young person that goes to university or has a job, that will become your priority. So yeah, I wonder whether they would have stuck around a bit more.
And definitely as well, like the technology aspect is a factor. There's definitely people that I know that they're in certain positions that, I don't know if it's fair to say because of their care experience, but these things are all related because of their background, which is care experience. They're in positions where they don't have perhaps as much access to, you know, webcams and mics and smartphones as, you know, as you'd hope, which I know has been a barrier for some people I know.
Yeah, the internet is expensive.
And internet.
Oh yeah. Because a lot of them just have to rely on the phones, and then if it's not a paid monthly, they have to pay for every single minute they're on being interviewed as well. And that to them is quite expensive, you know, the hours and all that.
And the quality of connection as well, if you're sharing
That's right,
people I know
yes.
in like the flat share sort of situations and stuff.
And I don't think we've had particular conversations with some of the young people as to why they've sort of disengaged, but I think from the conversations that we had early on, it's probably because they did have other priorities that kind of took over. And it's not that they didn't want to be involved, but there were just other things kind of going on.
I think it's harder for young people to stay in the room because there's different kind of pressures on you in some ways. Like we had the whole thing about payment stroke not payment because the benefit system, you know, and losing, you know, your right to benefits if you're...
That's true, yeah. I know there was, I think... Yes, I won't name anyone, but I know people who... that was the reason that they didn't stick with it, yeah. And that was a big factor for me, that I could get paid for my time. I wouldn't have done it, frankly, if I couldn't have done that.
I think that also with the evaluation, the project, I think is kind of triggered off a lot of new initiative in other areas, because I was speaking to Rosie recently, and NHS Scotland has set up a new thing called Neuro, now you keep me right, I'll send you the link for that. And basically they're looking for partners in research, which is their definition of community researchers, you know. So that means that what you guys have started here has triggered out a lot of new initiative right through the area. So they're looking at people from the academic side and the people who are living with that particular area, like in dementia. I'll get you the proper link later on, you know. They're looking for people.
I'm wondering about co-researchers in other research. I'm sorry, Louise, it's kind of it's because you were talking about how there's already a reputation. There's this concept of co-researchers and using them is floating around out there, and I'm wondering if we as a group, all of us, think there's particular areas of research that could especially benefit from co-researchers. Yeah, that's kind of the question. And I reckon there's got to be. You mentioned the LGBT, just because you work for it, and I think there's lots of research to be done there, and co-researching surely has got to be a good way to go about it, I reckon. Yeah.
And I think the project itself has created a legacy.
Yeah.
Because that PhD students and people who come to me now are more looking for us to be involved earlier on, rather than just be the guinea pig. They want us to look at how they are looking at us on the committees to frame the questions or whatever. And that, so I think kind of the project itself is creating a legacy, which is good.
And we're not just looking at dementia, we could be looking at MND, we could be looking at cancer, and so on. So the list is endless in terms of this community research idea, isn't it? The partnership idea. You know. The other one that was mentioned, which is our topic for next year's dementia conference, is the ethnic minority and dementia. That's going to be one of the topics we're going to talk about, and LGBT is also mentioned as well. So we might get Europe into that, Nikki. You know. I'll tell Ron now.
One area of research that's used a lot in is addiction research. So they call them peer researchers. So often people who don't know what the correct term is, former drug users or drug addicts who come in.
To me, you know, I think it opened up a lot of doors for myself, you know, in terms of my past profession's gone now because I've retired for 10 years, and this has opened up a new revenue or a new ideas for myself and how I can move forward. You know, not necessarily just dementia, just in everything, you know, I just see life totally different from myself in terms of my development, you know.